Welcome out. For those who may not be aware, this is the IIS7 for Developers session. There was a change at the last minute, so if you're looking for some other session, you might want to go out and check. Yep, it says on. We're having a few audio-video difficulties, as you might be able to tell from the projector. But I did want to get started on time, and maybe we'll do the reverse. So we'll do Q&A first. If you have any burning questions about IIS7 while they're trying to get the video straightened out, and then we'll get started with the session. Wow, hands already. Yeah, go.
Well, this is only in regards to the flickering and fun. So I've seen some detectors actually, if you change the refresh rate on your laptop, then it might have better or worse effects.
Huh. Well, I'll let the video guys play around with the settings. If I do it, they might blame me for it being broken. So, but thanks. Question? Yeah.
As far as I've heard, that like server version of IIS7 will only be available on Longhorn server, not backported.
Yeah. So the question is it true that IIS7 will only be available in Longhorn server and not be backported for down-level operating systems? That. Yes. So yeah. So it is true. It's available on Vista today. So IIS7 shipped with Windows Vista earlier this year, and it will be available with Windows Longhorn Server later on this year. In fact, we just shipped Beta 3 last week, which is a go-live beta to let you take it and start using it in real production scenarios. But the question was, is it going to ever be backported back down to down-level operating systems? And the question, or the answer, unfortunately, is no. We have made substantial investments in taking advantage of Longhorn Server features, and the code base has matured along with Vista and Longhorn Server. And at this point in time, we don't plan on porting it back down to Windows Server 2003. But as I mentioned, it is available today in a go-live license, so you can go try it out. In fact, we have about 6 or so web hosters who are already offering it live in production. You can go get free IIS7 sites, actually, right now, to try it out, or take Longhorn Server Beta 3, which is also freely available for download, and deploy it in your own company. Beta 3 is go live, yep. Yeah, question?
Kind of a continuation of that. I was wondering if Microsoft had any sort of best suggestions or maybe some scenarios internally for developers working on the client systems like Windows Vista to develop for server systems like Windows Longhorn Server, Windows 2003, to sort of combat the differences between the two.
So for those of you who couldn't hear, the question is, does Microsoft have any guidance for developers on how to build applications using Windows Vista that can target Longhorn Server when it comes out, and also target Windows Server 2003?
Well, kind of on the XP side, right? You're developing IIS5.1, but you're supposed to develop
right.
for IIS6.
So with XP, you had IIS5.1. The server platform was IIS6. And there were differences there that were hard to account for because you didn't have the same version on both OSs. The good news is with Vista and Longhorn Server, it is the same version of IIS. Now, obviously, we haven't been sitting still for the last 6 months, 9 months since Windows Vista shut down. So there are new additions to the product as well as changes. The changes are fairly minimal. Mostly, we've invested very heavily in performance and reliability and security, especially in hosted environments to make sure that it scales really well in say, shared hosted environments. The feature set is relatively the same. There are a few additional features you can read about on my blog, actually. I just announced some of the new features last week when Beta 3 came out. My blog's blogs.is.net/bills. But in terms of a developer, to answer your question, we actually planned the release of IIS7 to span Vista and Longhorn Server. And we planned all of the features and APIs that developers need to build the applications with and build extensions for IIS7 with up front and in Windows Vista, so that we could take Vista, offer that to developers, and then work on the more operations and data center kinds of work for IIS in Longhorn Server, so that when it comes out, developers can just move and deploy their applications on top of Longhorn Server. The other thing I should mention is when Longhorn Server ships, we do plan on syncing it with Vista SP1. And so you'll get the same bits in both Vista and Longhorn Server going forward.
That's kind of like that 2 bits paradigm.
Yeah. For those, yeah. So, yeah. Question back here. Any known issues with running legacy applications like ASP Classic? So compatibility issues you should be aware of. There is actually a compatibility doc up on IIS.net that lets you in on all the known issues that we have. There are some things that don't work in IIS7 anymore that we've discontinued. They're usually the kind of features that we've had, since IIS1 and 2 and 3 that we don't see people using a lot of anymore. In terms of classic ASP, it's supported and works just as fine as it ever has, and no known issues there. In terms of ISAPI, the existing extensibility model, we continue to support ISAPI extensions and filters just as before. There is one exception, and that is read raw data filters that were deprecated with IIS6. They only worked in IIS5 isolation mode, which was the backward compatibility mode we had with IIS6. Those no longer work with IIS7 because the IIS5 isolation model is now gone with IIS7. That's probably the biggest change, and all the data we have so far is it's not really impacting many people. Most people, when they move to IIS6, move to the new worker process application pool isolation mode, which is much better anyway. Yeah, other questions? Looks like the screen's coming along. Any other questions, or should I get started on this session? Eric, question.
Where can you find out more about the Go Live?
Eric Wersing here is the product manager for IIS, so he asked, where can I find out more about the Go Live? It's on iis.net/GoLive if you want to find out how to download Beta 3 and how to get that Go Live license. All that information is up there. iis.net/GoLive. Yeah? What's with the push at Microsoft to support PHP and other non-Microsoft products all of a sudden? Well, I don't know if I would characterize it as all of a sudden. I think as Microsoft has learned over the last several years, developers really want choice. They really want to have options. And, for example, when we looked at the PHP language in Windows, we noticed that there's a lot of developers out there building PHP applications. And guess what? We found out they're building them on Windows. They use Windows XP primarily as a development platform for building PHP apps. And then we looked at the server side, and we said, how many of those PHP apps actually run on Windows Server? And there were insignificant numbers, very small number of live production PHP applications. And we said, why is that? And we looked at the problem and realized that we hadn't invested in the right feature sets in IIS to accommodate PHP and other dynamic languages that were built really, that kind of grew up in the Linux Apache environment. They weren't really built for multi-threaded environments that IIS is. And so we decided, hey, we got all these developers building on Windows to begin with and then moving to Linux Apache for production use. Why not just let them stay on Windows? They don't have to worry about managing, working in both environments. And so that's kind of the rationale behind the investments we made as of late for PHP. And I'll show some of that off later on today. Are we good in terms of video, audio? Should I get going? Okay. One last question back here. Yeah, we actually thought a lot about that. We know it does take time, especially on the server, to really adopt and deploy the server broadly. It takes a lot of QA and a lot of testing. And so we did factor into that into the design. So for example, the configuration system, even with ASP.NET today, you can actually put system.webserver configuration in your web.config files. Kind of skipping ahead here, but for those of you who've seen IIS7 already, you can put IIS7 configuration in web.config files. And if it's deployed on an IIS6 server, it'll just be ignored. That's kind of what you want when you're running down level. And then when you deploy it on an IIS7 server, IIS7 picks it up and can read the configuration. Modules and handlers, the question you asked about that. You can also migrate very easily between the classic mode of hosting ASP.NET and the new integrated mode that I'll talk through in a minute. So we did think about that and factor into design. We know it's going to take a while before all of your servers are upgraded to Longhorn server and you're running IIS7. So there are some things you can take advantage of there. We don't have a document, it's a guidance yet for developers on that topic, but it's a great idea for one.
But it seems to me that you're really, I mean, if you want to target both platforms, you got to do double the work in terms of the configuration.
Uh-huh.
And that's what more what I was asking about. And I guess that's.
Yeah, most of the work would be around the configuration, the web.config, and the integrated pipeline, which I'll show off today. For those of you who aren't familiar with it yet, you'll see. Most applications use the integrated pipeline fairly surgically. So it's, most of the code's in the ASP.NET pages or the PHP pages themselves. But yeah, certainly something to consider there. Let's go ahead and get started. Thanks for coming out. I didn't introduce myself before. My name's Bill Staples, and I'm the product unit manager for the IIS team. That means I manage the developers and testers and program managers that actually build IIS. And it's great to be here at MIX. Thanks for coming out to this session. It was sort of a last-minute session that we put together because there were some schedule changes that happened late last week. So I'm glad there's lots of interest in coming out. The keynote was very exciting. I hope you all went to it. It was great to see all of that ship finally. We've been looking at it and thinking about it for so long here at Microsoft, and it's great to announce it. Now, all the Silverlight stuff is glitzy, it's exciting, it's sexy, it's all the client-side stuff. We're now moving into the server zone. So we're going down the stack as low as you can into the web plumbing. And that's what we're going to spend the next hour is talking about IIS7 and specifically things that developers can take advantage of with IIS7 that you've never been able to do before. There's a lot of stuff we could talk about with IIS7. I could probably present 4 or 5 talks with all demos and still not show all the features we have built into the product. That's why I named this one IIS7 for developers. So we're going to focus specifically on extensibility and the new extensibility model we're introducing with IIS7 that the product team itself used to build the features of the product. And second, we're going to talk about expanded application support. So specifically, some of the new support we have for PHP and other dynamic languages. So I'll show off both of those demos in both of those areas. The way I'll do that is we'll basically walk through the changes to the new core web server, and we'll talk about configuration, administration tools, and the extensibility support we have there. And then we'll talk about extended application support, and I'll show off some interesting demos with PHP and ASP.NET. So let's dig right into architecture. If you've not seen this slide before, you may not be familiar with the IIS6 architecture. But what you're looking at here is basically a snapshot of the worker process. So W3WP, the thing that runs your code as a web developer. This architecture is a very monolithic architecture. Basically, all of the web server features, from our static file support to all of our authentication methods and logging and caching support, as well as our ISAPI extensibility, are all hard-coded into one DLL. It's called W3 Core DLL. And that's basically the web server. And anytime we wanted to add a feature to IIS, we had to change that DLL, which meant we had to wait for the operating system to ship again, which, as you know, doesn't happen all that often. We did have extensibility, so we had the ISAPI interface for both handlers or extensions and filters. But when was the last time you saw the IIS team ship a new feature that used that extensibility support? Just like one time in the history of the product, and that was URL scan. If you're familiar with URL scan, it's an ISAPI filter, which is a great feature. But I think the fact that we haven't built on it as a product sort of indicates the level of investment we have in it and the level of flexibility it has. And we saw this architecture when we finished up IIS6, and we wanted to fix it, but we didn't have time. And so it became one of the core focuses of IIS7. So with 7, we've moved to a new architecture where we've taken all of the functionality of IIS, all those features that you're familiar with, and we've pulled them out of W3 Core DLL. And now they're implemented as individual discrete modules, so they're DLLs, that you can now add and remove to the server independently. And in the place of that monolithic core, we now have a very slim core web server that exposes a new extensibility model that you can now take advantage of. And all of these features are built on top of that public extensibility point. So we use the same API now that we're advertising to you to start taking advantage of with IIS7. This new extensibility model, this new architecture, facilitates some really interesting things. Number one, it allows you to build really lightweight servers. So you can now install just the IIS features that you want to use, that you want to support with your applications. That means lower memory footprint, it means better performance, and it means reduced attack surface. So if a patch comes out for CGI and you're not using CGI, you won't be prompted to update it on the server. It also allows for very custom and specialized servers. So if you don't like the way the IIS team does authentication, basic authentication, for example, you want to do it against an LDAP server or against Oracle, you can now rip out the IIS basic authentication module, write your own, plug it in, and away you go. If you don't like the way we do logging, you can rip out the IIS logging module, plug in your own, away you go. The other change I would like to talk about is the way ASP.NET integrates with IIS. Today, ASP.NET is actually an ISAPI. It's another one of the few successful ISAPIs that Microsoft has built. Very successful ISAPI. And as you can see here, basically what happens is a request comes into IIS. It goes through the IIS pipeline, which does the authentication and logging and caching. And then it's mapped, based on the extension, to the ASP.NET pipeline. And that's, you can see that in the orange block to the right. ASP.NET, it turns out, has its own pipeline where they do authentication and logging and other things. And they have an extensibility model as well, IHP module and IHP handler, where you can plug in manage modules and handlers. Now, this has worked very well for ASP.NET, but it does have some limitations. It means there's duplication in terms of functionality. We've got handler mapping in IIS and handler mapping in ASP.NET. We've got authentication in both places. And it means that in terms of configuring the server, you really have to worry about both ASP.NET and IIS configurations and getting them in sync for the server to work properly. With IIS7, we have a new integration mode that we're calling integrated pipeline, which basically, one step back, we have a classic mode that's there for compatibility, where ASP.NET is hosted through the ISAPI just as it is today with IIS6. And for maximum compatibility, you can run in that mode. It's basically an application pool switch that you can turn on. We also have this new integrated mode, which means these ASP.NET features that are implemented as modules and handlers can now plug directly into the IIS pipeline. And that allows them to work for all types of content. So, for example, that forms authentication module, the top right red one, it now can work for all types of requests. It can work for PHP apps, it can work for static file, it can work for classic ASP. It just works. You plug it directly into IIS, and it works. And this forms basically a new extensibility model for IIS server itself. So we've always had a C++ extensibility model with ISAPI. We've got that now with the new core web server extensibility support. And now we've got .NET extensibility as well. So you can extend the web server using C#, VB.NET, or any of the other languages of your choice. The .NET extensibility API is the same API that ASP.NET has today, IHP module and handler. It's extended with additional API sets. So there are now events for map request handler, log request, and post log request. There's also access to expanded headers and server variables. And this is not the full set. There's actually additional ones here. So I'd like to kind of show off the .NET extensibility and how you can take advantage of it with the new modular web core. So to start out, let's actually open up the IIS admin tool. You'll notice this is a brand new admin tool with IIS7. If you haven't seen it before, it's quite different. It still has the tree view over here on the left-hand side, but instead of showing you the content, which, by the way, you can get to if you click on Content View here, go back to Feature View. It shows all the features that are configurable at this level. And as I change between site back to server, the features change based on the scope you're managing. It's also got handy actions over here, basically tasks that provide a very simple access to some of the basic tasks and operations of IIS7. Anyway, I wanted to come in here and actually go to the modules, since we're talking about modules a lot, for my default website. And you'll notice that I've got a lot of modules here installed. This is basically the default set, not quite all of them installed, but many of them. And I can go back and click on Browse, and you'll see here's the IIS7 homepage. This is just an HTML file with a graphic. And if I come back to the modules feature here, you'll notice I've got lots of modules here I'm not using. Not using CGI, not using authorization, not using Windows authentication or caching or anything here. So one of the things that I can do just to illustrate the point is we can go ahead and remove all the modules. And come back, refresh the page, and there we go. Now you can see we've removed all the modules, including the error module that tells you you just misconfigured your web server. Not a very impressive demo, but it kind of illustrates the point that you can now take out all of these features and run with a very lightweight server. So I'm going to go actually add some back here. So we'll go add native module, and let's add back in default documents, so we get the home page. Directory list, we don't need directory listing. Let's do static file and anonymous authentication. So just those three. And while I'm doing this, let me also show off the configuration. So as I'm modifying in the admin tool, one of the things that I should note is that it's actually writing out this configuration changes into my content directory. So into my www root. It's writing these out to web.config. And you can see that right here. System.webserver contains all the IIS configuration. We have a modules list here. It's cleared, and then we add 3 back in. So it's clearing the inherited configuration and adding the 3 that I clicked on there. Default doc, static file, and anonymous authentication. So if you're familiar, if you're comfortable working in XML files for configuration, you can do all your config here in web.config. Copy that between servers, and move your IIS configuration along with the content. If you prefer a GUI tool, you can use the admin tool. We've also got full command line support, so you can manage it all from the command line, as well as scripting APIs and .NET APIs for doing all this stuff. Yeah? Yep. Good question. So all configuration that applies to a website or an application, so all URL-based configuration, can go in web.config. There's also a global configuration file that contains site and app definitions and global defaults, basically. And that file is actually, let me open it up for you. Windows System 32, inet serve, config, application host.config. And this file it's got the same schema basically. And you can see, for example, here's the default website definition. Again, it's all XML, so you can edit this one directly if you want. This contains the site and app definitions and the defaults. The great news is this file is also Xcopy deployable. So if you want clone 2 servers, you copy this file from one to the other, and it just works. In fact, we've taken the work to abstract file paths. So as you can see, the default website points to system drive, inet pub, www root. So if you've got one server using C drive and one using D drive, it just works. We also have made the encryption support that's built into IIS for sensitive data like passwords. If you end up using a custom account for authentication and it stores the password in the file here, you can export the keys and clone them onto multiple servers as well. Last I'll mention, with Beta 3, we've also introduced a new feature called shared configuration. which lets you put this file out on a file server and then reference multiple front ends at that centralized store. And you can manage it in one place, and all the servers in the front end get the updates at the same time. Yeah?
What has happened to the web.config and machine.config that was created
Uh-huh. What's the question? What's the... Yep. So what's the relation between web.config, machine.config, and this file here? So think of this as the equivalent of web and machine.config for IIS. This is the global file for IIS settings, so system.web server. And then machine.config and web.config are the global files for system.web and the other framework sections. So getting back to the demo here. So we just add those 3 modules back in. I'll go ahead and refresh the page. And there we go. Our website's up and running again. The difference is, instead of all those 40 modules or whatever that were loaded, we're only using 3. And that's all we need to serve this app. So let's actually go back and build a custom module now. I took out the logging module here when I add those 3 back. And I wanted to show off how easy it is to build a custom module for IIS7. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Visual Web Developer Express. If you haven't used this tool before, it's free on the web. You can go download it. It's 20 meg or something. And it's a great development environment for building these kinds of extensions. Go ahead and open up localhost here. And you can see it's got my HTML and web.config file. So let's go ahead and right-click here and say Add New Item. I'm going to add a class. Environment, rather than having multiple log files spread out across servers you have to aggregate and run stats over. If you could just have it all logged to SQL Server and then run SQL queries across the data. Well, let's go ahead and do that today. So I'll go SQL logging module. It's going to tell me you're attempting to add a class. Do you want to have it placed in the app code folder? The app code folder, if you aren't familiar, is a really cool feature in ASP.NET that basically lets you drop .NET code in. So I'm implementing C# code here. And when the server sees it, it'll automatically compile it for you and run it. So I don't have to sit there and compile it, recompile it every time I make changes. The server dynamically compiles it for me every time I make a change. So I'm going to come in here and get rid of a couple of things. We're not using any UI in this module, so get rid of all that. Clean up my code here. And this, we're going to implement IHP module. And Visual Studio also makes it really easy for me to implement it without writing lots of code. I can just click on the little drop down here and say Implement Interface, and it implements all of the necessary methods, all the required methods for me. I get rid of this, clean up a little bit of code. And so there's basically the 2 required methods are dispose and init. In init, let's go ahead and initialize. Here are all of the methods that I can go ahead and, or events that I can subscribe to. We want to subscribe to that log request event. So let's go ahead and do that and wire it up to a context log request method. Now, to save time, and so you don't have to watch me type, I've got some snippets here we'll drag in. So we're going to basically call a private method here, log request. Again, let's let Visual Studio implement that for me. And log request has got a whole bunch of SQL code. So you can see I've got my nicely hard-coded connection string here using a very secure password to my local SQL server. And then we're going to go ahead and create a connection and create a command that inserts these basic server variables into the log file, or into the database. Yeah. No problem.
So this pattern looks like that's the log file. That for whatever account you use to get the information from the log and then shove it into whatever your backend system is. Is that right?
Say it again. What?
Okay, so And so this looks like I can replace the log parser, which is simpler to me, taking stuff out of the IIS log, shoving it into the SQL server.
Yeah.
And now I've got the one-step solution. I can eliminate
Yep.
log parser.
Exactly. This is basically, instead of taking log parser and using it to query the data or using it to pump data into SQL Server, this module is going to log directly to SQL Server. This is something I'm building right here on stage. So it's not a part of IIS7, but something you can build with 40 lines of code. Yeah, you couldn't do this in IIS6. So, well, technically, I guess you could write a nice happy filter which logs data, but yeah, not many people do that. So let's go ahead and, the thing that Visual Studio does is kind of cool is it tells me when there are dependencies that I need to use. So go ahead and click on that and wire those up. Save this. And now let's create our database that we're going to log to. So I've got a SQL Express here. And I've got create database script. Go ahead and run that. Command completed. Let's go ahead and actually run a query so you can see I'm not making this up. Select star from log. Okay, you can see I've got no rows in it. Freshly created database. Now, let's go ahead and wire up the module we just built in IIS. So we'll go back to our default website here and click on Add Manage Module. And look at that. It's not only an admin tool, it's a debugger too. It's going to tell me in my app code directory in the SQL logging module, line 48, there's a dependency that does not yet exist. So let's go back and look at that code. And here we go. Here's line 48. System web hosting. Go ahead and import that. And now come back to our admin tool. Add a managed code module. It compiled it. So now I can consume it. So let's go ahead and wire it up SQL logging module. And we automatically pull up all the available modules, so including the one that we just deployed in the app code directory, SQL logging. And click OK. Now we come back to our config file, and it's telling me web.config changed. Let's go ahead and look at it. Now you can see SQL logging module is added to the list. Again, I could have just copied that in there directly. So let's go ahead and see if it works. Come back to our page, refresh. And come back to our database, execute the query, and there we go, logging directly to SQL. You see 3 requests here because the first one was to the default page, localhost /. The next one was for the static content, and the third one was for the image itself. Yeah, question? Yeah. Question is, can you use multiple logging modules? Yep, you can. You can have the IIS1 installed and this one too, and they'll both log. Yep, yep. This one can run the same time the regular logging module is running. And just to kind of show that how that works, or why that works, let's go back to our code. Remember here, we are subscribing to the log request event. And you can have multiple modules subscribed to the same event. So you can have, any number of modules subscribed to that log request event, and they can all receive the notification and decide whether they want to act on it or not. Yep. So this one's in the default the default website. It's for the default website only at this point. I could take the same code, compile it, throw it in the GAC, and register it globally. And all sites would now use SQL logging module. Yep, or you can have one per application. Yep. Yeah, question? Which what? Which type of trust level? Well, depends on what your module's doing, is the short answer. For this one, it should run a medium trust. I haven't tried it, but it should. Yeah. 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 The question is, if the SQL Server's down, would you have problems with websites if you're doing this, for example? Yeah, you might. That's why you want to write probably more robust code than I'm doing here. But yeah, it's certainly something you want to take care of. Yep. So let me speed right along here. We've got lots of demos. I wanted to talk next about configuration because now we've got a module up and running. It's great, but that hard-coded configuration string in my module code is not really the best practice, really. And it makes it hard for administrators, if they want to deploy that and manage it, to take advantage of it. They'd have to recompile the module. IIS has this new configuration store we just talked about with application host.config is the global file and web.config and any app directory. That makes it great for Xcopy deployment, great for web farms. All of the IIS settings are schematized in XML. So you can go actually open up, let me do it real quick. Go to inetserv config schema. And in this directory, we've schematized all of the IIS settings. So if you ever wanted to know, what the default value for a particular setting is, or what the range is, or what type of setting it is, you can come in here. Let's go ahead and look up default doc, for example. Oops. There we go. Default document. And you can see all the data that defines that section here in the schema file. The config system itself is built based on the schema file. So it has no intrinsic knowledge of any IIS setting or any one setting. It's all, again, all the IIS settings are built on top of this public extensibility model. So for us to introduce a new config section, we'll do exactly what the IIS team does. We will create a schema file. We'll drop it in that directory and then wire it up to application host.config. And we can automatically start consuming it from our module. And the great thing about it is we get free support for command line, for scripting, and for .NET access to that configuration section itself. I don't have to do anything else. I can automatically start managing it through the command line and those other tools. So let's go ahead and do that. So coming back to our site here, let's go ahead and create a new file. This is a text file. Actually, let me create a... let's go ahead and do new item, XML file, SQL logging schema.xml, and SQL logging schema. There we go. System web server, so I'm going to put it under the IIS settings. There's going to be one attribute connection string, and it's going to be type string. And we have to save this into the schema directory, so let's go ahead and do that. Windows System 32, inetserv, config, schema. I'm going to delete the one that Visual Studio added to my www root because I don't need it there. And put it in this directory. Oh, I forgot to clean that one up that's already there, so we'll save over it with this one. And so now we've got the config section defined in schema. Let's go ahead and start consuming it. So here's the hard-coded version of my code. Let's take it out of there. And instead, we'll implement a get connection string method and pass in the context. Go ahead and have Visual Studio create that for me. And how many lines of code do you think I need to write to consume that section? Oh, sorry to disappoint you. It's 2. We get the Web Configuration Manager. Oh, got a dependency, Microsoft Web Administration. So we get the section itself, and then we return the value. So go ahead and save that change. Now we've got the module consuming the section. Let's go ahead and configure the section in our configuration. Let's come back here and drop it in. SQL logging section, connection string, and there it is in our web.config file now. So theoretically, I should be able to save this, come back, refresh the page, and we should see nothing. It should just work. If we come back to our database and refresh, instead of 3 rows, we've now got 6. So all we've done is move the configuration out of the code and into file. And that's pretty simple, but look at the power you get out of doing that now. So appcmd, for example, is the command line tool. for configuring IIS. You can do list sites, for example, and I'll show you the two sites I've got on the server. appcmd list config default website section SQL logging. There we go. We now have access to our configuration from the command line. We can do, instead of list config, we can do set config SQL logging. And let's set the connection string to word wrap here. Oops. SA2. So we'll change the password and come back and refresh the page. And as expected, login failed for SA. So we can come back and set it to SA regular, refresh, and it works again. So command line support. It gets better, though. Let's go to users, build, desktop, demos, scripts. And I've got this VB script using our COM API for configuration with 3 lines of code. Get the admin manager, get the section, echo the value of it. I can access the same configuration via VB script or JScript against that COM API. So free support for all this extended configuration. Yep. Yep, it's remotable. It's over DCOM, so install the DCOM proxy on the client. It works just fine. Yep. That's cool, but one thing that I wanted to also show off is, come on, open up web.config. I've still got this SQL Server username and password in clear text here, which is not a great security story. How hard will it be to encrypt this data in code so that it's not readable if you get access to the file? It's not even a line of code. It's so easy. You just come into the configuration schema file, encrypted equals true, save this, and now when we set the setting, come back to our web.config file. It says it changed, we reload it, and there we go, RSA encrypted. So that's how easy it is to take advantage of IIS7 config extensibility. Yep? Yeah, you put them in the Windows System 32 INET Serve config schema. You cannot do that. Yep, that is a limitation currently. So it does require administrator permissions. Think of it as a deployment. It's sort of a deployment mode thing. You install the module, you install the schema one time as an administrator, and then you can start consuming it after that.
What module is supporting the
It's part of the config system itself. Uses RSA encryption. So yeah. Where's the key? So we create basically 2 keys when we install IIS, and you can import and export them. It's a machine store. Yep. You can also create your own keys actually, and use your own. You can plug in your own keys and use those as well. So that is configuration. Let's go ahead and talk about UI. The UI, as you've seen, is a completely rewritten admin tool, rewritten in WinForms and managed code. It's also completely extensible. So all of the features that you saw me play around with to get this up and running, let me go ahead and open it up. All of the tree view here is completely extensible. All these features are implemented as independent modules that can be removed, replaced. And the action pane here is also completely extensible. And I would show off how to do that, but it does take a little more time I don't have. So let me just show you the concept and configuration. If you go into INET Serve config, you'll see here an administration.config file. This is the global config file for the admin tool itself. And it's implemented just like the runtime is. We've got a series of modules here that implement the settings. So for example, if I wanted to take out modules and handlers as a UI feature, I could cut those out, save the file, close down my admin tool, reopen it, And now you see there is no module or handler feature there. Just like the runtime, the admin tool is completely pluggable that way. In fact, I've got a couple of modules here that I pre-installed. These are available as samples up on IIS.net/downloads. So I'm just going to uncomment them and close down my admin tool, reopen it. And you'll see now there's a couple of features that were just installed. You can't tell which ones they are because they seamlessly integrate. They're built using the same APIs the product team used to build all of these features. One of them is this IS reports feature. Let me go ahead and open it up. It has basically log file analysis built in. So you can get fancy charts here and graphs. You can sort by different types of reports. You can show pie charts. And all this was built pretty easily using the extensibility model that IIS7 has for admin tool. So that is admin tool extensibility. And if you want samples on how to do that, go up to IIS.net and check out those two that I showed off. Let me go on to FastCGI on IIS7. So this is the expanded application support. We've got great support for classic ASP still. ASP.NET, you've seen the investments there with integrated pipeline. I talked about at the very beginning we wanted to make sure that PHP developers could also run and deploy applications on Windows Server. So we announced late last year the partnership with Zend, which is one of the premier commercial vendors for PHP. And they're working on making sure that PHP runtime itself is very fast and reliable on Windows. And we're working on the interop layer between PHP, other dynamic languages, and IIS. And FastCGI is that feature. FastCGI, if you don't know, it basically reuses CGI processes across multiple requests. So it makes applications who need a single-threaded environment much more performant and much more reliable because they still run in a single-threaded environment. It's just that the requests are handled one at a time. And what IIS does is it spins up a series, a group of CGI applications, and then round robins the requests across them to maintain that single-threaded environment but still maintain performance. It's about 25 times, it depends on how you measure it. It's a lot faster than standard CGI support. And it works with any application framework that supports FastCGI. So we've got PHP running great, some Ruby, early Ruby instructions for how to get Ruby up and running with it as well. And we're looking at other vendors, Python, Perl, to make sure that they can run great on top of this FastCGI support. Yeah. Yeah, CGI, if you don't know how that works, basically for every request, we spin up a new process. That process lives for the duration of the request. As soon as the response is sent, the process is torn down, so it's destroyed. And that constant spinning up of processes and tearing them down is a huge performance penalty, especially on Windows. Let's go ahead and actually show it off. So to get PHP running on Windows used to be a real bear. I want to show off how to do it using IIS7. So I've downloaded PHP from the php.net site, and I've unzipped it into my PHP directory. First thing I need to do is copy the PHP ini dist file, this is the one I'll start with, into PHP ini. And I forgot to clean that one up, but we'll override it. And this ini file basically requires 3 changes for my demo. First one is that you'll want to know about if you ever run CGI, you need to change the force redirect setting. It doesn't need to be changed for FastCGI, but I'm going to show off the differences between CGI and FastCGI. So we'll go ahead and change that to 0. The other thing that I need to change is the extension directory. So this is where PHP should pick up extensions to PHP itself, and those are by default in the ext directory. And the last thing I'm going to do is enable the GD library, which is a graphics library for my app. So with those changes, I can go ahead and save. Now we need to register PHP with the server itself. So we go to handlers, and we do add script map, start up PHP, and map it to PHP CGI, and click OK. And now we have PHP registered and ready to go on the machine. So I have QDig, which is a photo gallery PHP application that I'd like to show off. And I've already dropped into this QDig directory a test PHP page. This test PHP page shows basically PHP settings. If you know PHP, there's a function called PHP info that spits out this page that shows all of the configuration that PHP has for itself. So it looks like PHP is working great. Let's go ahead and hit the QDig app itself. And you'll see we get an error. The good news is the error is much more detailed and verbose in telling us what might be wrong. Since I'm here on localhost, to remote users, you just see the 403 forbidden message. But since I'm on localhost, it tells me default document is not configured for this URL. Go ahead and set it. So come back to my app, go to default doc. And by default, we don't ship index.php as a default, so we'll go ahead and apply that. Now we come back and refresh. And there we go, QDig's up and running. And it's showing off my images that I put in there. So it's a very simple image gallery type application. Now what kind of performance does it get on Windows? I just wired up PHP to CGI, so the traditional way of doing PHP on Windows. Let me go ahead and show off the performance we're going to get. To do that, I've got a simple performance client here. I'm going to start up controller and a client. This tool basically throws as much traffic at the server as it can handle and reports back the requests per second. So in just a second, it's going to show us we got 30 requests per second on the first round of tests. We'll let it go one more round. This is WCAT, Windows something or other. WCAT. Up on my blog, I've got a link to it if you want to check it out. It's also in the IIS7 resource kit. So we got 31 requests that time. So go ahead and exit out of here. That was with standard CGI. So let's go ahead and set up fast CGI. To do that, I've got fast CGI set up. Go ahead and run that. And we're going to add PHP handler to fast CGI instead. Now we can go ahead and start up the controller again. So instead of using the CGI support, we're now using fast CGI. Where do you think the performance is going to go? We were at 30 before. What's this going to be? How much is that performance overhead of creating processes? 95. So we went from 30 to 95. So 3 times the performance just by changing out the IIS infrastructure that's hosting the application. Hosting, PHP. So 3 times the performance just by changing CGI to fast CGI. Now once you've got the PHP app up and running, the interesting thing to do is make it even faster. So IIS7 has this new feature called output caching that lets you output cache dynamic page data. So in this case, we've got these images being sent out, resized dynamically by our PHP app. We can now cache those in memory so that the PHP runtime itself doesn't have to process the same image for every single request. So how do I do that? Let's go ahead and come back to our web.config file and drop in some caching configuration. Save this. Come back to our performance client, controller, and client. And now guess what the performance is going to be with output caching turned on. Any guesses? A few hundred? 300. All right. Went from 90 to 3149, so 3,000 requests per second now. Because we're not doing any of the work of resizing all those images and regenerating the same output over and over. We're just caching it. So 3922. So that's another huge performance win. More, a couple orders, well, not quite. More than an order of magnitude both times. From going CGI to fast CGI plus output caching, even better performance. Yep. How's the cache invalidated? It can be invalidated based on timeout. Also be invalidated based on underlying data change. So if you have the output cache hooked up to the PHP page, if you change the PHP page, it'll get invalidated. You can also do it based on time. You can also do it based on server variable. Yeah?
What support do you have for tuning cache configuration?
You can tune the size of the cache, And there are performance counters available as well, where you can look at cache hits, you can look at which items are in cache, and those kinds of things. Ways you can throttle it yourself. So throttle base. Yeah, you can do it based on server variables or based on query string, and you can also show here. It's configurable based on location. So I just registered the cache with the index.php page, so you can decide where to apply the cache and where not to apply the cache. I should mention as well, it's integrated into the kernel mode cache. So we're actually using, you can store the cache in user mode in the worker process. You can also store it in the kernel with http.sys cache. And that's what I just did here with the kernel cache policy. All right, so we've got the PHP app and running really fast now. Let me show off a pretty interesting thing, which is how to take advantage of the first thing we showed off, which is that integrated pipeline, now with the PHP application. So to do that, I'm going to use that forms authentication feature that ASP.NET has, which is so cool because it means I can use forms auth and all of the infrastructure it provides with PHP and not have to write any more code, not have to write any PHP code to do it. So I'm going to do that by going into .NET users. This is an admin tool feature that configures the membership system. And you'll notice it's going to take a minute here to start up. That's because in my qdig directory, it just created this app data folder. And app data, it pre-populated with an ASP.NET database, a SQL database for my users. So it did that on the fly for me. So I can go ahead now and add a user. Go ahead and add Bill. And it has a question answer here. So if I forget my password or any of the users forget their passwords, they can come and reset it without having to call me, the administrator. So go ahead and create that user. Next thing we need to do is go ahead and turn on forms authentication. It's disabled by default, so we'll go ahead and enable it. Next thing we need to do is set some authorization rules. So I'm not going to go touch file system ACLs anymore. I can do it all declaratively in the admin tool, which is storing those rules in the config file itself. We'll see that in just a sec. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the default allow all users and add a new rule saying allow just Bill, and a deny rule that says deny all anonymous users. And last thing we need to do is go into the modules again and find the forms authentication module. And by default, for compatibility and for maximum performance, this module only runs for ASP.NET still. So by default, it runs just for ASP.NET. We can uncheck that and say run for all requests. And now we can come back to our qdig. It's going to tell us web.config change. We'll say OK. And you can see my authorization rules are in here now. The modules changed. We enabled forms authentication. And we enabled forms auth itself. So last thing we need to do is go ahead and add a login page. So let's go ahead and do that. Add new item. This is going to be a web form. We're going to call it login.aspx. And I don't even have to write the code for this either. I can just drag login onto the page, save it. And now the next time we request a page, instead of getting the page itself, I'm going to get the login form. This is an ASP.NET login form. I can type in a bogus password. It's going to tell me. Did I not click? It's going to tell me your login attempt was not successful. If I put in the right password, it's going to let me back into the image. So that's a server-side mashup if you haven't seen one of those before. PHP application with ASP.NET login control using the membership system that comes with .NET. And that membership system is really powerful. If you haven't used it before, you can plug in any provider for any membership store. It's fully extensible as well. So it comes with SQL provider, which we just use, and a Windows token provider going against Windows accounts. But you can plug in Oracle provider and LDAP providers and lots of other community modules out there to store credentials in any store, manage it through the IIS7 tool, use ASP.NET login control so you don't have to worry about SQL injection attacks and writing a bunch of authentication code that you're worried about whether it's completely secure or not. Just use the ASP.NET login control for any type of application. And that is ASP.NET and PHP working together. I hope to see lots of those type of applications in the future. Last thing I'll mention, IIS7 on Beta 3, I talked a little bit at the beginning, shared configuration for web farms. So we talked about that. We got the fast CGI support now built into Longhorn Server. So I showed setting it up by command line. With Beta 3, you can go and just install fast CGI. It's a part of Windows now going forward. It'll also be in Vista SP1. We also have new automatic app pool isolation. So when you create a new site in IIS, it automatically creates an app pool for it. That's a runtime container for it. It automatically creates a unique identity for that app pool. So it's completely isolated from all the other app pools on the box. And it creates a unique configuration file, global configuration file for that app pool, and ACLs it just for that account. So you have this real sandbox now between sites and applications automatically without doing any work. We also got the admin tool. So the admin tool that we showed off today is now completely remotable. It remotes over HTTPS. So you can use the same admin tool locally, remotely over the internet. And it's completely delegatable as well. So the hosters that are up and running on Beta 3 offering free IIS7 sites, you can now download this tool on XP or Windows 2003 and remotely manage your website being hosted using the same environment you'd use to build it locally on Vista. And we're also excited to announce a new FTP server. It's free on the web right now in beta form. It supports SSL. It supports membership authentication, so the membership support we just saw. It's integrated with the delegated support as well, so if you create a delegated user for site administration, that user can FTP in their content. It's got a lot of new great features integrated into the admin tool and configuration system as well. So that is IIS7 Beta 3. Go to the Go Live site to see more information. Hope you've enjoyed the session today. As you can see, IIS7 is really a new web server. It's more of a V1 than a V7. We built this extensibility model for us. We built all the IIS features on top of it, and for you. And we hope that as you take advantage of it, you enjoy it and give us feedback. Product team's up on the forums every day, so check out the forums on IIS.net and ask any questions up there. A couple of questions, and I don't know, actually, when does this session wrap up? A couple minutes? Okay. Yeah, questions? Does Longhorn, yeah, so the Longhorn server Go Live, the IIS7 Beta 3 license is actually a Go Live license for Longhorn server. It's only for the web role, though, so you can't deploy Active Directory or something else. I don't know if you'd want to, but yeah. Question back there.
Yeah, you said you're going to backport to Vista for FTP1. Is there anything that is specifically going to only be supported on Longhorn server as opposed to Vista? Like, I know there's some remote administration.
Only the remote administration support isn't going to be in there in Vista. That's pretty much it. Yeah, I did everything today on Vista. By the way, the demo today was all on Vista, so everything you saw me do, you can do today on Vista. Remote administration is the only real thing that's, yeah, different. Yeah?
Any good point to go to for WAS?
Any place to go for Windows Process Activation Service. So we didn't talk about that a lot today. One thing we've done with IIS7 as well is we've componentized the process model, so the thing that spins up app pools and worker processes to host applications. Those can now host WCF web services, and you can install that process model independently from the rest of the web servers. You can actually use the IIS process model to host Windows Communication Foundation services and not have a web server on the box. There's a couple of articles up on IIS.net. You can read about that. And the WCF team is also putting together guidance on how to use that with WCF. It was primarily built for WCF. Yep. It's actually not under the IIS hierarchy. If you go into Setup, you'll see it as a separate entity there, Windows Process Activation System. That IIS depends. IIS installs it automatically if you install IIS. Yep.
Any chance of seeing a user interface for FTP Active Directory isolation, user isolation?
A user interface for FTP user isolation. I think so the new FTP server does integrate with this new UI tool, and I think it has UI for that. So you should download it and check it out and let me know if it's not good enough. Any other questions? Excuse me? Is there a what? Metabase. Oh, yeah. Is there a metabase? Yes, the metabase is still there. It's an optional component. It's another module. So you can install it if you want. And the reason it's there is for compatibility. So if you have ADSI or WMI scripts or apps that use metabase APIs, you can install that component, and it will write through to the new configuration system. So it's there for compatibility. We didn't talk a lot about it because it's basically there for compat support. There are some limitations to it, but for scripts and for tools, it works pretty well. Yeah. My deck, I think all the decks as well as the videos are going to be available to everyone at the conference. If you want, I'm going to post it up on my blog as well with the code snippets that I did today. So if you want to play around with what I did, you can check it out on my blog. Yeah?
Is there going to be any integration with some of these modules into the web server system? Visual Studio? Could you load a custom module into that server?
Yeah. Yeah, so the question is there going to be integration between this and the Cassini, the built-in web server with Visual Studio? We're working with the Visual Studio team to try and get them to host this integrated core inside Visual Studio so you can develop against it. It's probably going to happen as an add-on to Orcus, so it's not available today. You can debug and build, as I did, integrated modules, but in terms of the built-in web server, it still requires it doesn't support this. You have to still use IIS. But we are working with them. That is something we'd like to do longer term. All of the modules that I showed off today, as well as the pipeline that hosts them, is completely rehostable. So you don't actually have to run any of that stuff inside IIS. You can take it all and host it inside your own service or your own process, actually. All right. Well, thanks for coming out. I'll be around for a few more minutes if you want to come up and ask me questions.